One of the biggest criticisms of combat sport martial arts training is that they don't train to go for vulnerable targets like the eyes, throat, and groin. That's the problem with combat sports, or MMA as self-defense, right? This is one of the most frustrating topics to try to talk about, because the people making this criticism aren't training to go for anything. Not only do you see this criticism a lot, you also see this trotted out as advice, like, what should I do for self-defense? Oh, go for the eyes, go for the throat, go for the groin. There's a humongous flaw in that logic, both as a criticism of combat sports and as advice for self-defense. In this video, which is also going to be a review of the Revgear Allstrike 2, I'm going to discuss the biggest problem with targeting the eyes. That's that you can't practice it. You can practice it, but should you be practicing it? Now, this is not a sponsored video or even a solicited review. Revgear did send me one of these, but they didn't ask me to do anything. In fact, I actually liked this thing so much, I bought 3 more with my own money. So that if we could skip that review, we can get that right out of the way. There's a link down below. I highly recommend them. And it's not just because, yes, now we can practice eye strikes, right? It's not just because of that. I'm gonna talk about that, but also these things, they're just cool in general. I have been using these for 6 months in every type of class and every type of training that we do here. From the combat sport related training for the amateur and professional fighters, to the kids classes, to the self-defense classes and the soccer moms.
There you go.
Hit that chin.
I've used this for all of it.
There we go. Make that head
and it
turn.
has proven way more than just a gimmick.
Poor guy.
Admittedly, I thought it was just gonna be a gimmick at first. I thought that I was just gonna make some funny content with it. I thought this whole thing would be funny, just having it. But this has turned out to be extremely useful. And one of those things is you get to practice actual visualization. When you make contact with the chin, you see the head snap. That's one more step that makes it a little more interesting. I want to say more realistic than pads. Punching hard and accurately is punching hard and accurately. But when your athlete or your fighter or your hobbyist or your client or whoever can see the head turn, that puts them one step closer to the real thing. Which brings us to the why. Because it's shaped like a head, it's shaped like a face, like it has eyes. And as you can see, we've been targeting those eyes a lot. And this thing is extremely durable. It's been withstanding full force shots, punches and kicks from pretty big, tough dudes hitting it pretty hard. But the eyes have been the only place where we've managed to do any kind of damage to it. You can see, but it's still, the foam, it's not like, it's still like all stuck together. I don't know how to explain it, but the foam is still intact. It's not like coming out in spots. But on a lot of these, the eyes have been the only place where it fails. Like, because we've been shoving stuff in there. But I don't know that there's anything soft enough that's comfortable to hit that's durable enough to withstand that. It's just kind of the price of doing business. When these start to come apart completely, I'll just get more. Being able to practice eye gouges is not the only thing that's cool about them. You can obviously visualize that moment, but you can pick specific targets behind the ear, the nose, the chin. You can visualize actually making impact with the preferred weapon on the preferred target at the exact right angle in a way that you can't with pads or gloves, in a way you probably shouldn't with your sparring partners. Which brings us to this eye gouge nonsense. I train for the streets. That's the problem with MMA. They don't train for eye gouges. Let me explain the huge flaw. This is so frustrating to talk about because the type of people that don't understand it, I don't know that they're capable of understanding it. If people give you the advice of go for the eyes, and then that's kind of the beginning and the end of their advice, they don't know anything about fighting. They just don't. They don't understand what actually happens when you put your fingers in people's eyes. And they don't understand all the things that don't happen when you put your fingers in people's eyes. Generally what they think will happen is you'll poke them in the eye and then this person doesn't want to fight anymore and they'll turn their head away and they'll run or they'll stop or whatever. And very rarely do you ever hear them say, well, you put your finger in the eye and then maybe that elicits a reaction and then you can use that opening. That should be a no-brainer, and we've covered that a lot. I've beaten that horse to death when it comes to this stuff. But what I think the confusion comes from, and I kind of get it, because if you watch an MMA fight and you see a lot of this go on, and the guy's like, oh my God, the fingers went in my eye, and now I can't fight anymore. He only can't fight anymore because he doesn't have to fight anymore. When you catch a finger in the eye, you get a break. When you catch a finger in the eye, the other guy gets in trouble. When that's not true, like in the streets, that's not what happens. Just because you think, oh, I don't need to be bigger and stronger and faster and better at fighting, I'll just put my finger in that guy's eye that's beating the crap out of me. A lot of times, I was a police officer for many years, and a lot of times when you're arresting someone, if you have experience and you have composure, you're holding the guy down and he's like fighting and struggling, you're just holding him down. A lot of times you're waiting for him to get tired or you're waiting for backup. And they will invariably reach up and begin to claw at your face because that's what people do when they panic. That's what people who don't know how to fight do. People that don't know how to fight will reach and claw at your face when you're holding them down. And generally what would happen is we'd be holding them down, they'd reach and claw for our face, and we'd go like this, and then just hold them down better. Because of experience and composure and exposure to the stresses of fighting. People inherently turn their face away when you start going for their eyes. People have to train themselves not to, which is a lot of the reason why MMA fighters get poked in the eye a lot, because as the open fingers are coming towards their face, they don't do this. And now the thing is, if you get somebody good in the eye, boop, that can severely change the trajectory of a fight. But it's just not something you can rely on. People will no doubt point to like examples of it happening. You know, a big problem with the combat sport thing is they see John Jones poking everyone in the eye and everyone, oh my God, now there's fingers in my eye. And then they act like, oh, see, when he has fingers in his eyes, like it's harder for him to fight. Like, yeah, but he's also fighting John Jones. Another famous one is the military combatives exercise where the guy poked the other dude in the eye and then did like the walk-off KO, but with an eye gouge. Yeah, if you put your fingers in someone's eyes, that can cause them problems, but it's not that sticking your finger in someone's eyes can be harder than you think, because when you go to do it, they turn their head away, and if you don't have positional dominance or an angle or some advantage over them, they can just do this, right? And then if you don't have anything else that you know how to do, they will just reorient and the fight will continue. And that's the thing, you have to continue to fight, which it's good that we have this, because we can practice actually fighting to go with all our eye gouge trickery. And now we've used it for that. But eye gouging is a skill. You have to take your finger, one of them or more than one of them, and put it in this little tiny target. And therein lies the problem. Taking something this big and putting it somewhere in here is already hard. The thing moves around. They're moving their feet. They're putting their hands in the way. They're pulling their face away. Taking a fist and putting it on someone's face under stress is hard. So when people say, just stick your finger in their eye, dude, we're going to take something that's even smaller and put it in an even smaller target that's moving around, that the person has an even stronger inclination to keep away from danger. It just doesn't hold up to logic. That like, oh, just put your finger in the eye, dude. Now, while eye gouges are somewhat overrated by people that don't know how to fight, they're underrated by people that do know how to fight, because they're largely unnecessary. But there is a time and a place for training it. We train them here. We train eye gouges. Eye gouges have an analog. If you can throw a pretty good straight jab into someone's nose or chin or eye, right? You're working on the same skills that you could get your fingers in there. If you are using this as a standoff or as a diversion, or you're pushing with it, that's the same skills as posting, right? We post a lot. Yeah, just get it in. You don't have to like try to stick to them. Just get, yeah, a little bit and then move on.
No one's gonna let you hang onto their face. Just get that thing in there for a second. Just worry about target. You know, we're just getting that target. Yeah, that's good, Robbie. That's all you gotta do. Keep your chin down. There you go.
Now, at the same time, if we're practicing that skill, and we also want to visualize that our fingers could be going into these targets, which are fine targets, but they're not exactly fight enders. In fact, the reason that they're outlawed in combat sport is not because they are fight enders. They're banned from combat sport because they're not fight enders. That's going to be harder still for the non-competitors to wrap their brains around, because some nincompoop would be like, let me poke you in the eye and see if you want to keep fighting. First of all, if I have to let you poke me in the eye, that kind of proves my point, not yours. The reason that a lot of these things are banned from combat sport is because they will do a disproportionate amount of damage to the person in the long term relative to the impact that they're having on the fight at the time. Translation, his eye's going to be hurt forever, but it really is not going to affect the fight as much. Whereas if you punch a guy and knock him unconscious, that definitely ends the fight, and he can probably recover from that. If you scratch or detach his retina, he just now has a scratched or detached retina, but the fight is going to keep going. That's the problem. People that don't know how to fight won't get that. And that's what's frustrating about this stuff. So the solution that we have come up with is that 6 days out of the week, we train for like high percentage gross motor stuff. Punches, kicks, knees, elbows, takedown defense, clinching. And every once in a while, 1 day a week, we have one class where we take those same skills and those same principles and those same strategies and just add in a little bit of flavor to it. To remind you. Remember that while you're posting, you could find that finger in that eye. Because if you don't practice something, you're not going to do it under stress. Hell, you probably won't do it under stress even if you do have practice. That's why you're that's what under stress means. That's
Look at this. Our people over at Revgear says. Do you know what this is?